Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
What's up? Hi, Sarah. Okay, let's try that again. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
There we go. So happy to see all of you all. It's so nice to be in a room that is like jam-packed and full. I'm so excited for the energy that is here. I know you are going to enjoy our symposium speaker tonight. I want to remind you of a couple of things. A, you are in person, so give your full attention, okay? You know, don't be petty and be texting while you're right in the front row where you can see. I'm throwing shade. But also, this event, we are taking attendance. So when this event concludes, meet me at the tables outside so that you can go ahead and get your name signed on the sheet so that we know that you were here. Obviously, because the event is being recorded and streamed online as well, we will know who attended online. Good, so remember that. Meet me at the tables outside to make sure that you sign in. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. This is our keynote event for fall 2022 for the Symposium on Social Justice and Inclusion. Brian Avalis is going to come up and do our introduction for our keynote speaker. Welcome, Brian.
Okay, well now I'm not hidden anymore. Alright, so artist Lesley Martinez is a Chicago native and explores the visual history of her Afro-Mexican ancestry, referencing cultural aesthetics found in African masks, Mexican sugar skulls, and traditional embroidery and textile designs, combining it all with a love for urban cartography in what she calls a collective portrait. The choice of using ink on papyrus and Hosho paper is layering the texture of fragile, ancient manuscripts that reference the passing on of a legacy. Martinez's work unearths the intrinsic understanding that the visual components of our cultural identity is a type of knowing and spiritual language embedded in our bloodlines. Her ink work has sold at international markets including Spectrum Miami 2021. Additionally, Martinez is a 2022 James Weldon Johnson Fellow in the Arts, represented by Connect Gallery in Chicago, Illinois. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Behavioral Science from National Louis University, a Master's of Science in Marketing and Brand Management from Walden University, and is currently a PhD candidate in Community Psychology, focusing on economic justice at National Louis University. We are excited to welcome Lesley as our symposium keynote speaker for the Symposium on Social Justice and Inclusion for fall 2022. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Get centered a little bit. You're never gonna make it. You're just too weird. No one's gonna want a fat girl. You would think that was a bully saying those words to me. And in truth, it's what I said to myself. I am here for all my intersections. I'm here as an artist, as a person who values community, who loves people at her heart. And the last few years, as you know, have been very challenging. I was in the middle of a PhD program and the pandemic happened, toppled with a new divorce and no understanding of who I was, or who I was becoming. And so there was, at least 18 months worth of heavy introspection. But I kind of wound my way through a process that I think I just want to share with you. And that's really what the entire gist of today for me is, to share my creative process as I sort of unpacked a lot of trauma. As a creative, oftentimes, we kind of get a bad rap around, just not being dependable, not being, sort of what society wants you to be and all these different things. And so you hold the weight of all that on your shoulders and you attempt to fit in, you attempt to kind of do status quo, and you do all those things and realize that's not working. It's It's not working. So what do we do, right? And so I'm just gonna talk a little bit about my creative process. But I want to sort of introduce you to something that I think will kind of just help you resonate prior to me kind of going down a winding journey of who I am and sort of what I kind of connected the dots to. What I learned was this concept of centering joy in my body. Now I know that might kind of sound a little weird. Depending on your personal journey, you may have understanding about energy work and sort of what your body, how your body is basically a generator, an energy generator. And maybe you might understand that, maybe you might be a master at that, There's a lot of information out here. But I'm just sort of sharing how I center joy through what I call a visualization. And so if you don't mind, and if you don't want to close your eyes, you absolutely don't have to. But I'm just gonna sort of read some prompts to help you center yourself in your seat, allow yourself to be fully aware in your body, and kind of walk through a journey where you find yourself enjoying your life. Okay, close your eyes with me. Now, in your mind, we're going to on a search to find you as a child, as a kid, doesn't matter what age. It's whatever age that shows up automatically when you think of your favorite season, your favorite time. And maybe that experience that you're connecting to in your mind right now is something related to things that you like to do. What does that feel like in your body? What does it feel like in your spirit while you're kind of just thinking about you at your best? What are those emotions? And so as you're kind of like going through some inventory, some self-inventory of you at a time when joy was pure, I want you to begin to pull it from the ends of your mind and start to ball it up into a little light orb, right? A little magic, personal magic light orb in your mind. And I want you to pull it into yourself and let it sit right at the center of your abdomen. And just kind of hold on to the experience of what joy and pleasure and happiness, uninhibited, actually feels like. And pull it into this moment right now. Now, that's how I center myself when things get chaotic. And I wasn't able to do that for a very long time. And so, at the core of these things, I really do a lot of problem solving, as you heard. I like school. I've been doing school for a little while. And, while I did a lot of self-education, I dropped out of film school in 2000. That was a while ago, I know. We're like in 2022, and I feel like there's I think we're about to go into a recession at that time too, but journey of self-validation was where those thoughts were kind of haunting me. And I'd say up until about 2.5 years, even at the highest level of education that I was pursuing, I still had these thoughts that beat me up every single day. And I don't know if you can relate to that, but my goal is to kind of just to be as raw and as honest as I can for this moment in time with you. And I want to just talk about some things about how we begin to understand what might be inhibiting us from a joyful experience. And from joy, we realize that everything we desire is in alignment, right? But how do you get to that if you don't know sort of what's blocking you? So I'd like to kind of break things down into phases of understanding. And the first pattern, obviously, we have the past, we have our memories, we have the things that we remember fondly, and then there's the things that have hurt us, right? We talk about the present. If we do not address those issues, they come to kind of haunt us. And so whenever someone says something to us, we're short on a trigger because it's not going to happen to me again. And then without even knowing it, that trauma begins to make its way into our expectations about the future. And it begins to gnaw away at your confidence, at your desires. You kind of opt out of different things. And it really comes down to this concept that all of us have some sort of interruption in our existence that sort of pokes holes or stabs us. And it kind of presents itself in different ways. So trauma is an emotional response to something that is unwanted. A lot of times trauma comes from things that we didn't ask for. We are operating in our minds using, basically pulling from our childhood experiences to navigate the best that we can. But what if we weren't given what we needed to have, right? How good are we going to be at navigating? Trauma in the past often shows up as body ailments. A lot of the tension and a lot of the stress that occurs in our body comes from unresolved trauma. Trauma shows up in the spirit when we feel we're not worthy. There's a voice inside of our head that kind of repeats maybe what we experienced from our things that we could not control. Maybe a voice, maybe it's somebody's voice that's saying words of discouragement on a daily basis even. It shows up and it does the job for them years after they're done. And then trauma shows up in the mind, and this is really kind of connected to the future. I'm just sort of giving you these little entry points to my conversation about how trauma shows up in the mind and how it affects the future us. And so how many of you are into quantum physics? I figured there might be some folks here. And so the concepts that I love to dive into, because I love cartography, there's certain things about my art that I get connected to a more ethereal plane when I'm pulling and creating. I realize that there are traumas that aren't even mine that I'm also experiencing as well. And it's generational, and it's things that are passed through a genetic space, and then they end up haunting. And a lot of times it shows up as just different mental ailments. But ultimately, if we are able, have the ability, the autonomy in our bodies to walk ourselves through a process by which we integrate the pain that comes from trauma. And ultimately, it gets us to a place where we remember who we are. All right. Some trauma types, right? I'm sure you all have experienced either one, maybe you've experienced all of these things, but no one is safe. It's all part of the human experience, and we are doing our best to navigate. And we're doing our best to show up every day and function in a space that all this is playing out in your head, or it's playing out in your body, it's playing out in your mind, and you're attempting to be normal, and you're attempting to kind of do the motions. But if you're experiencing pain, it is your body's alarm system. And that means that everything, all the emotions that have sort of come, or entry points into your life, unless you do a very conscious decision, a conscious work, and we'll talk about kind of what those tools are to kind of unpack that, it's going to stay there. The pain of trauma doesn't go away over time. So time does not heal all wounds. That is not truth. What it does do is it maybe goes into our subconscious. And that subconscious is like an operating system that's basically leading and directing you without you even knowing that you're protecting yourself or you're attempting to avoid pain because the trauma that you have is still gnawing away in the background. And so that's why healing is important, right? All right. So I'm starting to get a little bit more warmed up. I'm really happy to be here. I grew up in Chicago and I was homeschooled for a lot of years, and it kind of allowed me to connect the dots around a lot of my interest points. And so I did everything from guitar, piano, voice, gymnastics, juggling, sign language. Does that resonate with anyone? Just a lot of things you do well, right? And so the next phase of my learning and understanding as I got older was trying to connect the dots. How does this process work? So I kind of worked on this idea of invisible to invisible process, right? How do you take an idea and make it a real thing? And then I started to see the correlation between the emotions that we experience and our character, and how it kind of also goes in an invisible to visible trajectory. You can kind of see how emotions resonate inside of the body. And so when trauma enters our world, enters our space, our body is embedding the pain receptors, the pain or the experience. It's embedding it into our cells. It's embedding it into our psyche. And so even though when the problem has moved on, we still experience it. We still have emotional experiences. Now, if those emotions from that trauma do not get unpacked in a timely space, it begins to affect how we think. It's just a natural trajectory. It's just the human experience. And so if you think through just sort of anyone that you can observe, sometimes it's a little easier for us to see it in somebody else than ourselves, right? But if you've ever thought, how did somebody do something so off character? Or maybe that person is always X, Y, and Z, or that person has a character in which their behaviors are so consistent, we wouldn't doubt the fact that this is who they are, right? But that starts from an invisible space. And so a lot of the characteristics that you may be known for could actually be coming from trauma. I know this is some heavy stuff, but I wanted to dive right in so that we could get to sort of my journey and kind of lighten up the mood a little bit. All right, so some tools to take with you on your journey. The reason I kind of put this in the beginning of this conversation is because I want to show you sort of how I use these tools to sort of unpack some things and kind of get to a place where I'm actually knowing who I am and showing up to every opportunity and every space, a full, complete person. So the meditation and visualization experience, it is not connected to any religious practice. It is simply your ability to sit in a space, quiet in the mind, and see, and allow yourself to just sort of follow what your thoughts and be an observer. And some of the steps around self-validation, which is really, I think, at the heart of healing, is bearing witness to your own life. How many of you can say that you actually watch yourself go through this life? Everyone? Anyone? Do you feel like you're present? Like, do you champion yourself like you're watching yourself do a good job? Okay, good. You see that not many of us do, right? And maybe it's because we don't know how, but this is kind of what this process sort of unlocked for me. How do I become my champion? How do I show up for myself like I would someone else or another friend? That was really sort of what got me to this point where I began to prioritize this over everything so that I could show up fully in my work. So the nature walks, getting grounded, in this facility, you see like you were just connected to nature, unlike any space. I mean, I'm from Chicago, and these trees are really tall. And I think it's probably one of the biggest impacts that I've had since being here, which is how tall your trees are. I know that sounds odd, but if you've ever been to Chicago, you know, our trees maybe go about two stories high. Maybe in the park, they'll get a little wide, but those redwoods or whatever those trees are, I don't know, really is magnificent. I'm just saying. But connecting and kind of giving myself perspective, that was really, really important. I am one element of the entire system, and my role matters. That's kind of what I began to unpack. I use sound and light frequency. Are any of you familiar with sound waves? I figured I was talking to a pretty heady, you guys are pretty smart, know light, sound, frequencies a little bit. So if you're not familiar with this concept, obviously Google and research these things. I'm kind of connecting the dots for you as I did for myself. Sound and light frequency actually change your body through sound waves. As you see, different color lights have different color wavelengths, and the way that you perceive that light is, it has an effect on the brain. And the same thing with sound. And if you ever want to combine maybe the sound and the light frequency together with the meditation, it's an amazing time, and there's a quality of rest that I have to highly recommend everyone do. Obviously, we have professional help, right? We need help. We have to reach out, and we have to be honest and be willing and be transparent. It's the only way to kind of unpack some of these things that are operating in our subconscious. There was actually a time when I had repressed memories. So as I'm creating, and this is actually where I started to get a new boost in my art career. It came when I began to do the work through my pens, through my pen and my ink, which I'll show you some stuff in a little bit. And that was really, really, really helpful because the way that we approach a creative process tells a lot about who we are and how we logically show up in the world. So when you master a creative process, you're actually learning to master yourself. I keep an art journal as long, sometimes I combine both. And then healthy friendships, right? Like, we understand the role of healthy friendships. Do I have to, anyone? We're good, healthy friendships, we know the value of that, we know like toxic behavior, we know how to show up fully, we know how to reciprocate. Anyway, forgiveness is also something that I had to learn. And realizing that forgiveness is a gift for yourself and not anyone else. So these are just some quick kind of points that I really wanted to drive home. Let me see what, okay, here we go, all right. So our healing process is an iterative one, just like learning. So there is no rush to get better. There is no pill you can pop, right? There's things that kind of delay pain, that will delay an experience, but ultimately it's something you have to choose to engage and integrate into your life, a process that sort of unpacks pain points. Personal accountability is also required in this journey. It means that you have a lot more control than you may acknowledge. It means that you can choose to engage a process, or you can choose not to. Slow reactivity to external stressors will certainly provide a moment of time for you to process your emotions. And what I mean by that is a lot of the violence and things that we see comes from what's called like a reactivity space. This reactivity is really what gets us in trouble. So if anything, like let's say, it takes you some time to actually prioritize a healing process for yourself, at least give yourself time when in a situation when you're feeling emotionally charged, to give yourself a moment to come down and to consider yourself Consider your options. Strategize on behalf of yourself. Be your best friend. Coach yourself off of a ledge, right? Everyone in your life is your mirror. I'm just dropping these things because I didn't have a lot of time and I just kind of want to get the good stuff out here. But everyone in your life is a mirror. If you have a friend groups, that means you're reflecting each other. It means that you see something in them that you see in yourself. And that's kind of how this life works. You're going to naturally attract people who both you admire and despise at the same time. And the reason that happens is because that's how we take care of ourselves. When we see a reflection and we see something that we don't necessarily like, it's an opportunity to reflect in yourself and make adjustments. And as I said before, forgiveness is a gift for yourself. It's not for the other person. It is a key process in removing the negative energy that's trapped in your emotions. It allows you to make a choice to release it. And in that choice, you free your body up from holding the weight of that toxic energy. All right, I'm gonna talk a little bit about myself. I'm usually in smaller groups, and I really like, if you have any questions, please start to think about them, or I'm available. I know that was a lot, I just kind of dropped on you. Any thoughts, any responses? I would love to hear from you. Oh, thank you. All right, well, we'll keep going. All right. So in the conversation about bearing witness to yourself, I highly encourage you to take a time, to actually create a timeline book. How many of you are on Canva? You guys use Canva at all? Kinda? Well, if you don't have Canva, it's pretty easy. It's just like, you can use Google Slides as well. But I use this presentation tool a lot to give myself structure for explaining something, right? So I think that if you get anything about like what's your next steps or what you can do, this is something that you can do for yourself to bear witness to your life. Start at the beginning, wherever beginning is for you. I'm gonna start in 1980, on July 3rd. I kind of showed up into this universe. And by 5 years old, I was painting cardboard boxes and building structures, and pretty free and carefree. So between that time and that picture of graduation of high school, a lot went down. And as a child, dependent upon parents, it wasn't my fault. I had no ownership to that experience outside of just being along for the ride as a child, as a person sort of witnessing the effects that trauma has on the people you love. In this case, it was my parents. And so I'd say 1995, I almost died, had a near-death experience with my mother. My mother had a bout with bipolar depression, and it showed up with schizophrenic episodes. And she basically, it was a hot summer day in 1995. A lot of people died that year, and she poured bleach all over our house to the point where the fumes, according to the paramedics, said that if we were in there another 10 minutes, we would have passed out and died, right? So there's something that happens to the brain when you realize that it could have been over before it started. And so that, I think, was my saving grace, that I was aware of, who I am and what I'm here to do at a young age of 15. And so with that, I began to dive more into my creative self. I joined everything at the high school level, all the Shakespearean things. And then did some bouts with college, did a lot of self-taught graphic design and things, a lot of hustle culture back in 2005. And I ended up becoming a self-published author, starting my own publishing company. It was right at the beginning of like sort of Web 2.0, where you can do your drop shipping and do some kind of your own things, right? But I published some books, and I actually kind of began to do books on bullying and pain and different trauma and things like that. All right, so I'm just kind of showing you some evolution of my art. So I was 18 in 1998, and then I had my first solo show in 2008. And it was definitely more photography, it was more graphic imagery, but it was all about deconstruction. And so it was interesting that I was kind of obsessed with deconstructing faces, deconstructing who we think we are and reassembling it. So I've been on this journey for a while in introspection. But I like to kind of show like it existed in high school. I didn't wait to kind of unpack that. And then in 2018, I kind of developed a more pen and ink style work, and I got really into details. And I almost had this micro-macro effect where if you got close to this, you would see that there's all these like really tiny lines and really tiny textures. And if you pull out, it kind of looks like you're flying in an airplane over some land. And there's different like shapes on the ground. That's kind of where the cartography references come in. And then I also have this solar experience happening as well. So I'm very much into that micro-macro perspective. This is another tool that I use. This is 2020's vision board. I kind of wondered if I should have showed you, but I just want to kind of show you what my processes are, you know, things that I wanted to do. Some of these are very close to happening. But I mean, we're headed towards the fall, into the winter, and this is an opportunity for you to kind of just brain dump all the things, all your aspirations, all the things that you're believing to happen for yourself, that you're working hard towards. Connect that with that timeline, and you'll start to see a sequence. You'll realize that everything that's happening to you is actually happening for you. Even the bad stuff, even the trauma. It's an opportunity to grow in ways that maybe you would never press yourself that hard to do. And some of you, I wouldn't want those negative experiences to happen to you. But if you see it like a sequence, if you see it like a recipe, and you're a seed, then it starts to kind of all kind of fit together. And I don't know what you're going through. Obviously, these are very personal and very like reflective conversations and thoughts. But I want you to learn to validate your life so that you don't fear invalidation from anywhere else. I actually, I'm like 1 degree from ACON right now. 2 years, and I'm like, I know somebody who knows him. All right, I'm going for that ACON. So yeah, this should be fun. This should be something that, you know, all of the things that you think are too big or too weird or too much, like, don't worry about that, you know. I know that people look at that and say, she's just doing way too much. And I am, and it's okay. There's been some pretty cool breakthroughs that have happened for me. Those books that I mentioned that I did in 2010, actually I worked with a company to package them and turn them into animations, and I got representation, and now I'm shopping them, right? So the idea is that whatever you, and I should say I'm shopping them for production so that they would be an animation. And so, you know, that might have seemed like a pie in the sky dream, but because I never let it go, and I kind of knew that this was part of my wheelhouse, I just, you know, I put it down and came back to it, and that might be a process as well. All right, so here we go to some more art. So this is more recent. I'm doing a lot more collages, definitely going through a self-portrait phase. Any of us doing self-portraits? Any of us doing selfies? Okay, all right, I thought so. All right, so I took a lot of selfies during the pandemic, and I was like, what do you do with all these selfies? I should do something with them. So I use a process of, I just go to the Staples and blow things up and keep blowing them up and cut them out and reassemble and have fun. And that's kind of the process that I use with the photos, the imagery, and there's some gold flakes. I don't know how it's translating on the screen, but the stuff that was mentioned, my newest series, is work that I've done on papyrus. And so papyrus is a plant that grows in the Nile River. It is one of the most ancient, it's an ancient technology, like literally for thousands of years it kept information and translated it better than any computer I know. Like computers break in like 2 years, but like this papyrus is still here. I don't know, I think we should have a backup. So papyrus is something that I really enjoy because I kind of connect the dots around the aesthetic of my African and Mexican ancestry. And I kind of think to myself, what would I want to communicate to the future generations, hundreds, 200 years from now? What would I want them to understand about me? Words fail me, clearly. I'm stumbling through the speech. But something about the scroll, the art of writing something, like writing a letter that is on an ancient paper that still exists in this planet, and then communicating a visual letter to the future. It just really excites me. And so, yeah, just kind of showing you kind of a breadth of my work. Here's a little snapshot of my process for this one series. So this is gonna lead you into like where my other joy spot is. I have a lot of joy spots, by the way. So this is a pen and ink on black canvas, and I don't plan my work. It's something that I have a concept, an idea, or like I'll have color palettes, but other than that, I tell myself there are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. And that's a really powerful thing as a creative, to talk to yourself and tell yourself there are literally no mistakes. Everything is working for you. So if you see a line as a choice, wherever you choose to go, there's a connection that you'll make in that space. So I bring a lot of that concepts and those thoughts to my work. All right, and so here's where I'm at right now with some of my stuff. I have some new clothing line being developed. I've got some shoes and some outerwear. But it's fun. I've always wanted to do this. This is the kid version of me. This is how I go back and kind of reclaim the things that I thought I couldn't have because I was talking so negatively 20 years ago. We also have a TV show in the works called Luminaries, where we travel around the world doing renewable energy projects in the African diaspora, in the communities that need us. We show up. All right, and so in closing, I just want to leave you with the understanding and the knowledge of your 3 superpowers. These are superpowers. These are not to be left on the floor. The first one kind of shows up in the area of that past domain. It's about our body, instinct. Who we are and what we're to do is built into our body structure, into our DNA. So the more you deal with the trauma, you're unlocking a very powerful instinctual power in you. If you deal with this trauma that kind of gets you in this triggered space where someone says something to you and you're getting, you're getting reactive and you're just like, that's not fair, that's not right. If you can master that space and kind of pull yourself down into a fuller understanding of why you are triggered, you'll begin to master the space called intuition. And it will kind of remove that negative self-talk, and it'll give you almost a supernatural ability, I'll say that because I'm an artist, a supernatural ability to feel your way through this world, through opportunities, through relationships. You'll have a gut experience. They say your gut is really your bigger brain, your gut. And then your other superpower is your intellect. It's your mind, your ability to wield. A lot of that, what happens in the mind, manifests your future. And so when we deal with the trauma in the mental space, where we need to deal with some of the repressed emotions or understandings, or need to offer forgiveness so you can set yourself free, that's where the intellect kind of really shows up. So all these three working together while you navigate your life, it's pretty freaking powerful. So that kind of concludes my story. I want you to center joy as much as you can. Take a time for yourself. Hold yourself in the middle in your gut and enjoy yourself. And I'm Lesley Martinez.
You know what I really love about Lesley, and I know y'all gonna have to agree with me on this, her voice is so relaxing. I know I wasn't the only person that thought that. Before Lesley comes up and asks some questions, I just want to say, many of you were sitting out here, I'm so proud of you for being so attentive. Like, give yourselves a hand clap, right? Because like, being in the space together, sometimes it's hard, paying attention, being together like that. But I also want to point out that Lesley talked about something that if you don't take anything away, I think you need to take away the most important piece, the center of joy in your life. I think it is so relevant to you all that you don't even realize how relevant it truly is. I think that every day you need to find a reason to find some joy so that you can continue to keep going. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
You literally need to make a commitment. This symposium, and Lesley has set the tone. Now you're gonna have to hold yourself accountable. This symposium week is about recognizing that healing is a process and not something that just happens and stops. Think about every process you've ever committed to. Did you become perfect overnight? Do you feel perfect today? You feel like there's always something more you can do, right? You feel like I can go a little further. You get good at one thing and then you pick something else and you're like, I can go a little further. And so you keep going and you keep going and you never quite feel complete because every process is a new opportunity to find happiness. So what I think Lesley is saying to you and what I am saying to you is make a commitment to find joy. No one's gonna just throw it at you. No one's gonna say, hey, be happy today. If they did, you think they was weird. What do you mean be happy, right? But if you make a commitment to yourself to take a few minutes every single day and find your joy center, I promise you it works. I've been practicing it since I met Lesley in June, okay? Every day, I find a reason to smile, to laugh, or to cry. Just because you're crying doesn't mean you don't find joy. You might actually find some peace, and your peace is your joy. You feel me? Awesome. Make a commitment to find and joy. Thank you, Lesley. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Before you all leave, I want Lesley to have an opportunity to answer any of your questions. Y'all open to that? Awesome.
Any thoughts, any comments on anything? On all things, yes.
This one's from the Zoom session.
Yeah.
There are times when I find myself in a position where the three superpowers are fighting each other. In those situations, are they really fighting, or is something else making a doubt within myself to not listen?
Oh, that's such a good one. So it's kind of, I think on average, most people only have 2 of these superpowers activated. If you kind of think through it, I know that for myself, I'm really good at maybe that intuition and that, I pretty much move through my spirit, through my gut, I kind of take things and take jobs or, hop on a plane and figure stuff out pretty intuitively. And then sometimes I am really good at, intellectualizing things. But I also too find that sometimes one is working harder than the other. And so I think that since, let's say, instinct maybe not activated as much, it might directly be related to a trauma that is existing in the body that you may have suppressed or are not acknowledging is actually affecting. So whenever we kind of go through cycles, it is the energy, the matter within us, around us, trying to reset the course for us to unpack ourselves so that we can be the best person, the best of ourselves, right? So in the instinctual space, a lot of times those are operating systems that are operating in the background. Sometimes you don't realize every time someone asks you or says, hey, would you like an opportunity to do this? You say, no, I'm good. No, I can't, right? So maybe you're constantly opting out of things and you don't realize that you're opting out because of something that happened 10, 12 years ago. And maybe you got set up for failure, and maybe you did do something and you felt like you didn't do a good job, and then you told yourself, I'll never do that again. So then when it comes 10 years later, you forget that still, that window, that tab is still pulling juice from your core. And so a lot of times the cycling has to do with something that is left unresolved. And so whoever's sort of dealing with that, I would say it's inventory time. It's time to get still and listen. And your body and your mind will actually tell you what's happening with you if you just sort of quiet yourself and listen. The pain typically surfaces when you slow down. A lot of times we're busy. We do the busy work because our intellect is the strength. So our mind is maybe less traumatic, right? And we're like really good with our intellect. But then our instinct gets put to the side and our body fails or something like that, So that's just kind of how I think through it. I really hope that helps. Are they able to say if they have any follow-up, I'll answer as well. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah.
I know you talked about light and sound waves as a way of feeling. Do you have any experience or know much about EMDR? I know it's something that's being researched more and more.
So I go down rabbit holes, like everyone probably. So it's a lot of self-taught knowledge. So my knowledge of it is more just a general sense of it. I'm not, I study behavioral science, less than, but quantum physics and those things really, it really sort of scratches an itch in my brain around how us as energy, walking energy beings sort of operate in the world around us. And so quantum physics kind of does that for me. But the frequency, if you've ever watched the effects of frequency sound waves on water and sort of seen how the vibrations actually change the molecule structures or the arrangements of them, anyone familiar with those studies? Yeah. And even the effects of negative talk towards rice. I don't know if you've seen those rice demonstrations. You can actually speed up a decomposition process by talking crap smack to rice in a jar. Yeah, Google it. But yeah, so that's kind of the depth of my knowledge in terms of reference points. I use, there's free energy music, sound wave music that's available on Spotify or YouTube and things like that. And I use that just to, it's like a formula, right? If something's stressful in my day, then I'm going to prioritize an hour to do absolutely nothing and to sit in the middle of all the things that need to be done, and I'm going to prioritize myself. I'm going to put this music on, I'm going to go into my thoughts, into my brain, into my world, and kind of show up for myself and kind of, I know it sounds a little weird, but it definitely works. It definitely is a method for centering and grounding yourself in the middle of chaos. And when you realize that a lot of the chaos is simply your perception of urgency, if you remove the urgency by centering yourself, sometimes those things just work out they'll work themselves out, and you don't have to hold the stress in your body. So I hope that helps. I don't know. Anyone else? Anyone do similar things in their art? Are there any sketch artists, any drawers, any inks? Anyone, do we do media? What are we doing? I should poll everybody. What are your different studies? Anyone? Yeah.
I do a lot of journaling.
Journaling? Okay. Yeah, journaling is powerful. I've been journaling since I was 8. I know that sounds weird, but I was just so excited. I got a journal for my birthday, and I was that kid writing. Writing dreams. I did a lot of dreams. Anyone do dream journals? Yeah, dreams are really powerful. So that's something that I think also could be an opportunity. If you're having very vivid dreams, those are, it's a great way to see all of the operating system concepts that are like open, right? That you don't know are affecting you, but subconsciously they're actually, your brain and your body is processing it. And that's what dreams really are, right? When you're at a state of rest, your body is integrating, it's working to keep you alive, to keep you functioning, right? So those images and those different things are designed to kind of give you, it's like a dashboard, it's like a warning system, right? Anyone else? Yeah.
I was wondering if you have any recommendations for kind of centering yourself when you're surrounded by people who maybe want to negative effect on you, whether that be like family or friends, or just different situations.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, so yeah, absolutely. What's so interesting about this, like when you realize that you're just, you set the intention of your life by your desires, by centering joy and kind of saying, this is what I want. And so you begin to align who you are, who you perceive yourself as, who you show up internally, and then as those thoughts and emotions begin to download, you show up as your character, as your personality. But I find myself I'm trying to, give me 1 second, because my brain just went in like 2 different directions. I was like, wait, I want to say that. I'm also neurodivergent, so it's okay. I realize that I'm probably not the most eloquent speaker, but there's so much that I have, so many different integrated experiences that I have to reference. So I'm trying to give you the best example. Can you phrase it in a way that is really sort of like you're looking for a process that helps you do?
I guess how you center yourself when really, I don't know, if you have a really impactful message, say that or like those family members, it's really influential, but probably not.
Yeah. So what happens is the only thing that you can control is yourself, right? So when you increase your vibrational experience, right, through your thoughts, through your environment, let's say people are watching how you react. And so a lot of the stressors and the contention and strife that comes is because two people are perceiving things in opposition, and therefore there's no receiving or exchange, right? So I kind of get to a granular level of just, if you don't see it my way and I don't see it your way, and we are holding to our beliefs and our things, there's no give and take. So what you can control is yourself. What you control is what choices you're making to create atmosphere in your home. Let's say you have the ability to be in your room and to wield in that space. Let's say it's the music that you play, the environment that you set. A lot of times, your personal changes will affect other people, and that's power. A lot of times when you realize that people are sometimes waiting to see an example of what it looks like. to center joy, right? So you begin, as you prioritize yourself, other people are open to prioritizing themselves, or it no longer triggers you, and therefore there's no argument. And then you gotta talk about something else, right? Or you gotta do other things. So a lot of times that, I don't know if that helps a little bit, but really it's about you. When it's all said and done, you can't control other people's reaction to you, what they think of you, but you can control yourself. And if you almost could like scare them off with joy. If you are so happy and they're miserable, it's going to create something where balance is brought, because it's really hard to combat a joyful person. You know, it's really hard. So I don't know if that helps a little bit, but it's really about you, and I've just figured that out. So if we all become masters of self, then you kind of give space for someone else to figure it out for them. And you'll see very easily, you know, they'll see a change in you and they'll say like, so yeah, I noticed you were doing that. What is that exactly? You know, so what does it do? Does it help? What do you think? It changes really quickly. We're all on a journey for healing, right? And sometimes unhappy people like unhappy spaces. And so if you refuse and prioritize, you know, yourself in that space, you can definitely change it. Well, yeah.
So I don't know if like, so sometimes like I feel like an abundance of emotion, because like sometimes I'll experience everything all at once and there's nothing at all.
Yeah.
And so when say like I feel so much love that it just shuts down,
Sure.
and I've run out of things to do to fix it.
Wait, fix what? You said you feel a bunch of love and you shut down?
Yeah, it's like when it all like really breaks, I can't fix it, like I separate myself and
So there might maybe I need a little bit more details around what does breakdown mean?
When you feel absolutely nothing and follow all the process.
You feel everything, everywhere, all at once?
All at once, and you absolutely follow.
Yeah.
And then you have to know, like, you can't center yourself and things and try to make yourself feel better.
Yeah, so authenticity is, I think, at the core of what I would suggest leaning into. It's okay. If you feel nothing, it's okay. You're trying to force yourself into feeling something or changing. Part of this self-validation journey has to do with accepting where you're at, feeling it. That's it. And then it passes. And then you find another moment. And then maybe over time, you begin to realize that when you're maybe the real struggle has to do with you trying to force yourself to fix something that's not broken. Maybe it's not broken. Maybe you just feel the feels and you get tired because that's a lot. You take a nap, you reset, or you go out and do other things. Yeah, that's how simple, that's really how easy it can be. I think we force ourselves, or we think that it worked for Lesley, it should work for me. And that's not true. That's not at all. I think when you allow, I call it like giving myself grace. Like I would not treat somebody as hard and as mean as I treat myself, like, get up, don't be lazy. Like all that's coming from you, that's not, and no one else is saying that to you, that's you. That's, that could be something that you learned, or something that is, an emotion turned into words. You saw how it went from invisible to visible. You remember that? It's just a process where, right here, at some point, your emotions became thoughts that then became your words that you used, and it's like repeating, it's on a cycle. But if you deal with the emotion of like failing, maybe, is it failure? Does that feel like failure? Not doing it right? Something, yeah, well, you gotta release it. It's not true. Nothing bad is gonna happen if you don't figure it out and do it perfectly. it's okay. And I think we need to be kinder and more loving to ourselves, because like literally we wouldn't tell like our kid sibling that, you know, we wouldn't force them to do things that just aren't feeling natural. So why do we do it to ourselves? Right? Anyone else? Yeah.
I guess like, what would you say is being, first step in like thinking when, like, the place where you're supposed to feel like centered in yourself, or like the only way you can access something like authenticity is something that's like hard for yourself. Like, how do you think that place can be implemented so that you can feel like,
Yeah, I've experienced, yeah, absolutely. I used to pull my hair out. I was like trichotillomania or something, to pull it out the hair. So I think what happens is there's a guilt cycle that happens. There's like a shame for doing it, right? There's a shame, there's a hiding, and it turns into the cycle, right? Because if you're able to be honest about how it feels and how it releases stress, there might be another couple roads that show up for you to release in other ways, right? So there's this thing about pain that we don't really talk about in society. And because I'm still standing up here, I'm gonna go into it a little bit. But it's about this pain culture, right? Pretty much all of our medical systems and social experiences is selling you things to remove pain. And so we have an issue with pain, with feeling pain. It's uncomfortable. We don't like it. I mean, everything from, some things obviously need some support and we need some help with the pain, absolutely. But from a default solutions lens, we opt out of pain too quickly, right? Because pain is just a receptor. Pain is just an alarm to say something is wrong. And so if you are relieving pain, and in that relieving of pain, there's a bit of pleasure, that is why we continue to do it, right? And so in that, there's a secrecy, and then there is a shame or guilt or hiding, right? And then that leads right back to the pain happening, and then you want to relieve the pain, and then you start all over again, right? So I think the authenticity of being honest is the first step. And in creating transparency defaults with a support network, that they won't cause more pain when you admit what you're doing or how you're coping, right? And then you create this open air experience where your authenticity might actually lead you down a path of resolve, where that pain and that issue, whatever you're dealing with, actually gets resolved through honesty and through network, and not dreading the fact that people find out. People find out. Let them. It's real. This is life. This life is difficult. We gotta opt in. You have to opt in, you gotta be an active participant. You gotta witness yourself. This is the first piece, so we can witness you on the second hand, Any other questions? I know we're on time. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So I just have a question because I'm gonna put this so I just was wondering because I found a lot of different problems, but I look my life in a very break even. But yeah. And so I live my life on line at 0. If I go above 0, that's too much. If I go below 0, that's too much. And so I want to keep that with my life pleasant and happy. I'm very happy with that. And I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Okay, I'm just going to make sure that I'm hearing you. You said you essentially are living your life pleasantly unhappy, so that's already in the negative, so that's not balanced. Because balance would be 0. Unhappy is a negative, right? Like it'd be vibrationally, so happy, 0, not feeling anything. Unhappy would be a negative charge, right? So you're choosing to be under 0 even though you want to be at 0. Is that what I'm hearing?
In my first cousin, I was happy to each other out, so I'm set 0.
Got it, the word pleasant mattered, sorry. Pleasantly unhappy. Well, this is the thing, it's a choice. It's a choice. So the choice to, that's a very controlled environment that you're attempting to live your life through. It's gonna be disruptive. There's gonna be a moment in time where things break. Amazing things happen and things break. There's always this like wave of ups and downs, right? So you attempting to hold everything together is probably on a crash course for failure in terms of like effectiveness. So the idea is, what if you released yourself from that maintaining a 0 and just allowed yourself or work through some things that might be what you're afraid of? Like sometimes being afraid of pain will cause that attempt to not try to feel anything. Does that make any sense? Yeah. So I think it's just, what is that, you know? What are the thoughts that are attempting to control you to the point where even a normal human experience is painful? Things happen, things fall apart, things get put back together, you move on, you have another good moment, you have a bad moment, and you feel that, and it sucks. And you wake up, or you have maybe another amazing thing that happens in the same day. And it's okay, and it's just part of you as a person receiving and processing information. And at some point, if you can identify something that you truly do enjoy, that's more on the pleasantly happy space, if you actually found a way to repeat that, and then center that, you might actually enjoy some things more regularly, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like it could be crazy, it could be like some off-the-wall pleasure, enjoyable thing that you just really need for yourself. You prioritize that, and it brings you to a space, and you use that to then bring it into your schoolwork or whatever element, other parts of your life as well. I hope that really helps. Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us again, Lesley. We really appreciate your wisdom. That concludes our Symposium Keynote event. Make sure you sign in outside before you leave, and see you all tomorrow for the workshops. Thank you so much.